There we go. Hello and welcome to the Brass Ringers podcast.
Wow.
That's how we're starting this. That's apparently how we're starting this. I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Daniel Morgan. Dan, how are you doing this week? How are you feeling? What's going on?
You know what? I'm all right. I'm all right. I'm fine. I've got you know what? It's happened this week again. I've been working a little bit less, and I've just gotten one of the social medias that really screws me over is YouTube, and
Mm.
I've been down so many YouTube rabbit holes that I just absolutely like hate myself for. But other than that, I'm fine.
My curse, especially in the last couple of weeks, has been TikTok. TikTok
Oh,
is the work of the devil because I went on it because I ended up watching loads of compilations of like funny dog videos from TikTok with my girlfriend, and that's fine. You're like, that's fun.
it's
We're
great.
we're just
Who doesn't want that in their life? Yeah.
yeah, and I'm like, well, why don't I just go to the source? Why am I watching these on YouTube when I could just download TikTok and watch it? And so I did that. And have you downloaded TikTok? Have you used it yet?
No,
Cool,
I'm
don't.
scared to. Yeah.
Because each video is like 20 seconds, right? So you go down the gym and you're in there and you're doing a bit of a workout. You're doing a set, and then between sets, you're like, oh, I'll
Yeah.
have a quick look on TikTok. Next thing you know, you've been sat there for 20 minutes, not doing anything, just watching dumb
Oh,
videos.
yeah, you're that guy. I know you don't go to a public gym, but if you did, you'd be that guy
No, I'm
who's
too
fucking. I'm
no,
like, get off the fucking bench press,
no.
mate.
I'm very aware
You've been
when there's
sitting
people
there.
waiting. I'm very aware. Don't you worry about that. I do not have that
Yeah.
that affliction. But yeah, it's taken up
All
a
right.
lot of time recently, which is very upsetting. So I'm there with you.
That's bad.
I'm there with you. But we're not talking about TikTok or YouTube today. Instead, we
We're not.
are going back in the annals of time. We are slicing ourselves a bit of quiche, and we are talking about Junior Fatu, otherwise known as Rikishi. Dan, would you like a little rundown of Rikishi's history?
Well, I would, because the three matches that you pick for us to talk about are all from the same year. So we are discussing a very, very specific era of Rikishi,
Yes.
and I really don't know anything outside of that era. So I would like a bit of context for that.
Interesting. So I'll get onto your like what you know about Rikishi in just a second. I only kind of knew a bit about Rikishi. I knew he was in the Head Shrinkers to start. He'd been with WWE for ages, and then I assumed the character of Rikishi had been around forever. And this is definitely not the case.
No.
Um, Not the case at all. So we start in the early 80s with Rikishi, a young man at this time, wrestling as Prince Alofa in Montreal, as Wikipedia describes it, a young babyface high flyer, if you would believe. Very Uso-esque. We will.
Does he have the same physique as the
He's
Usos
a
in that
smaller
period?
guy at this time. So in
Yeah.
the early 80s, he's a
Yeah.
smaller guy. Interesting fact that I did not know about him. So he has that big scar going up his stomach from like his belly button to the bottom of his stomach. I've always wondered what that
Yeah.
was. In 1982, when he was 17, he was shot in a drive-by. And that's where the scar comes from. Yeah, there you go. So he starts wrestling in Montreal as Prince Alofa, and then he becomes Fatu. Initially working in the WWC, we are back to the World Wrestling Council in Puerto Rico as part of the Samoan SWAT team with Samu. At this time, he also works for WCCW and AWA, along with a few other territories. Does that throughout the 80s, and then in 1992, he joins WWE as the Head Shrinkers. So they get rebranded as the Head Shrinkers, very Wild Samoan-esque.
Well, now can I just interject a second just
Do
to
it.
ask a question? Now, is he like? What is his relation to Yokozuna?
Oh.
And is Yokozuna already in WWE by the time that he gets there?
So, no. Yokozuna comes around, and I want to say 94? 95.
Right.
No, I take that back. He will have just started about the same time, actually, 92, 93.
Oh,
Um,
right.
he is, of course, and I should have said this from the top, Rikishi is, of course, part of the Anoa'i family tree. Along with Yokozuna, they are cousins, in fact.
Cousins.
The Anoa'i family tree is not something we're going to get into here because it's massive. It's bigger than my own family. Maybe one day we'll do a tier list ranking the best Anoa'is. I don't know. There's enough of them. You could.
That's an idea.
Put that in the bank. We'll come back to that. Yeah. So yeah, he starts wrestling as the Head Shrinkers. They do some good stuff. They work with all the tag teams at the time, win the titles a couple of times. Then they're broken up kind of late 94, 95 after working heel. Funny enough, alongside Yokozuna, they help Yokozuna win a casket match against The Undertaker at the Royal Rumble in 94, I'm going to say. So they do that for a while. Head Shrinkers then kind of disappear. Then he re-debuts in 95 on Raw as Make a Difference Fatu. So this is his kind of young street kid, kids don't do drugs, role model type of character at this point. Doesn't last very long. He's gone within a year and repackaged again in 96 as the Sultan. Have you ever seen Rikishi as the Sultan?
You know what? I think I probably have because he's probably entered a Royal Rumble or something like that.
I assume he's in a Rumble. It's very Kwang-esque.
Right.
We've got the kind of almost Bane style mask on. He's shaved his head and he just has one long ponytail.
That doesn't ring a bell.
Well, it wasn't a very long-lived gimmick by 96. So he debuts the character in 96. By 98, it's gone. And the only thing he really did of note is challenge unsuccessfully for the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania 13 against the young upstart Rocky Maivia. Again,
I'm looking at it now, and
it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's sort of a cross between like Kwang and Vader or something like that.
Yeah, not great.
It's actually quite scary, actually. If you just look at the mask and the bald head, it is quite Bane-esque, actually.
Yeah, but Kwang was scary to some. Doesn't always work for you though. So he's gone off TV for a year, comes back in 1999, and the tail end of 99, repackaged as Rikishi. Do you know what Rikishi means?
No, it sounds Japanese.
It is.
Something?
It is a Japanese term for a sumo wrestler. So a little bit of a nod there as well to Yokozuna. Is it just the
Japanese word for sumo wrestler?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So a bit of a nod there to his cousin Yokozuna, which is nice. Immediately begins teaming with Scotty 2 Hotty and Grandmaster Sexay, of course, as Too Cool, which I think most people are familiar with. And then we get to the year 2000. The year 2000 is like Rikishi's year. He obviously is teaming with Too Cool. He wins the Intercontinental Championship. He's in the finals of the King of the Ring tournament against Kurt Angle. So everything's going well. It then transpires that the night after he debuted in 99 was the night that Stone Cold Steve Austin gets run over. I'm sure you're very familiar with all of this from back in there. Turns out it's Rikishi, and the reason why he did it was for The Rock. He believes that the likes of Bruno Sammartino and Bob Backlund and Hulk Hogan and Stone Cold Steve Austin are holding down the likes of Jimmy Snuka and his kind of family dynasty, or the kind of Samoan wrestlers. So that's why he did
I
it.
thought it was for
And then
Triple
it
H.
turned
I
out to
thought
also
Triple
be
H was
just Triple H because they realized that,
he's the
yeah,
mastermind.
they realized that actually Rikishi's not that scary. So let's make it Triple H as the mastermind and Rikishi's it's very spotty, and it's a thing they just kept building on. Like, you knew they didn't know, and they keep layering it. Initially, from what I've read, it's Scotty 2 Hotty that gives the game away. He slips up in front of Mick Foley and says that, like, oh yeah, time Rikishi ran over Stone Cold. What?
Kayfabe
Yeah,
wise.
yeah. Not actually. He wasn't. He didn't break
He
a
doesn't actually
crime.
spoil the outcome of it
Yeah.
all. Yeah.
So yeah, during these years, he's feuding with Edge, Christian, Kurt Angle, Taz, Val Venis, Chris Benoit, Stone Cold, The Rock, Triple H. He then tags with Haku immediately after this, and they go after The Undertaker and Kane and the Hardy Boys and the Dudley Boys. So he's a busy man. And then in May of 2001, gets injured, which means he misses the entirety of the Invasion angle. So he's not around for any of that. Comes back pretty much the second it finishes, which I'm going to say is a well done on his part for missing that. And when he comes back, doesn't do a whole much of note. He becomes tag team champions with Scotty 2 Hotty again, and then doesn't do much else around then. What is an interesting note, though, is in 2002, Hulk Hogan made his return to the WWE, and his first match was a dark match against Rikishi. So his first match back in the WWE was against Rikishi, who obviously lost the match, but did manage to get a stink face in the match.
That's the big question. I was going to
He
ask
hit
that.
the stink face on Hogan.
Going to ask that.
He did it. And again, in kind of a nice like moment for Rikishi, Hogan's last match before this in the WWE was Earl's Court 1993 against Yokozuna. So an interesting little parallel there.
Lovely.
10 years between.
Yeah.
So then 2004 rolls around. WWE played with him a few times to lose weight. He doesn't lose weight. They fire him. Almost the exact same story that happened with Yokozuna. He then starts kind of working the indies. He does All Japan Pro Wrestling. He does AAA in Mexico. We see him pop up in TNA for a little while as Junior Fatu. To varying degrees of success. The only match I remember watching from it was the Reverse Battle Royal. It is what it sounds like.
Starts with 30 men.
No. Starts with... So it's just a regular Battle Royal. And it starts with like 20 men. But they're outside the ring. And you got to get in the ring. Reverse Battle Royal. So it's like 20 guys, 10 of them get in the ring. Then it turns into a traditional Battle Royal. And then the last...
So they're fighting each other to get in the ring.
Then they have to fight each other to get them out the ring. And then the last two have a regular singles match.
That's
TNA,
a lot, isn't it?
TNA.
Yeah.
You gotta love Russo. So yeah, he does that, and now of course we see him. Since 2015, he got inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. We see him kind of crop up sporadically to give out a stink face and be an inspiration to his children, the Usos.
Do a little dance.
Do a little dance. So yeah, that's Rikishi. So what are your feelings on Rikishi before we get into these matches? What's your relationship with the Big Quiche?
Well, I think what I realized when I was watching these matches is that I think I either wasn't watching wrestling anymore at this time, 2000, or I was exclusively watching WCW. It's one of those two things, and I don't remember what it is. Because I didn't remember any of this. I'd heard about the the Stone Cold running over Stone Cold, but I couldn't remember any of the details, so I had to be refreshed on that. My memories of Rikishi are Too Cool, dancing, silly dances, the Royal Rumble. What year is the Royal
2001,
Rumble?
where he comes in at number 30.
Oh, so I was still watching, but I was just
Or
the thing
do
is
you
in the
mean
UK
the 2000 Rumble where he does the dance spot with Too Cool and immediately?
the
That's
dance
2000. So
the
he does the
dance
dance and
that's
immediately throws him
2000.
out.
So
Yeah.
I was still watching, but the thing is, if you lived in the UK at that time, it was very, very difficult to watch wrestling anything other than like
Yeah.
sporadically. So the big pay-per-views, if they were on like Channel 4, but like I'd have to get my mum to like record it and on videotape, and it was just like it was really hard to be like a
Yeah.
consistent wrestling fan. And then I can't remember what year we got Sky, but then when you got Sky, you could watch like highlights and Heat and stuff. So it just wasn't by any means like a cohesive, comprehensive wrestling experience at that time. But I remember Stinkface. I of course remember Rikishi. He holds like a very vivid place in my head, and I remember, Too Cool and the dancing. I'd never seen any of these matches that you had recommended as watch, so they were all very much new to me.
Interesting. Well,
I never remembered Rikishi being in like the main event at all.
Well, and this is kind of the only year where it happens, and it only happens once, which is the final match we'll talk about. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on that. So we'll start with the mid-carder versus mid-carder match. We'll start with Rikishi versus Val Venis. It is a fully loaded 2000. Yeah. All of these pay-per-views we're talking about as well, all defunct names now. Fully Loaded, No Mercy, and Armageddon.
Okay.
All brilliant properties. Like, they're great names for pay-per-views, all of them.
I like Armageddon and No Mercy. I'm not that fussed on Fully Loaded.
There's something about Fully Loaded.
No Mercy, by the way, No Mercy ran for a long time.
Yeah. Armageddon went till 2008, and No Mercy, they got rid of it around like 2010, but then they brought it back for when they did the brand split again, and now it's maybe gone, maybe still going. Who knows? They pick and choose when they feel like it. So we go to Fully Loaded 2000. It's Rikishi versus Val Venis in a steel cage match. Trish Stratus is accompanying Val Venis to the ring. Dan, what are your thoughts on this match as we hop into Rikishi?
Well, one of my thoughts while I was watching it was, boy, they did not know how to punch back then. Those were
real.
That was one of my. We've lost that. We do a lot of forearms now. We do a lot of like different things, but the art of the punch.
Just throwing a good.
I feel may have been
who did a good punch recently? Who could throw a good punch? Bad Bunny.
Kane.
Bad Bunny. That man threw some punches in the build-up to WrestleMania.
Anyhow, so yeah, do you know what? This is a weird match because it's like they're in a steel cage, and then it's like actually fairly. I mean, I don't love steel cage matches because of the whole escape angle, but
this was infuriating at points for that.
Yeah, it's annoying and it's so hard to suspend your disbelief. But the match itself is quite underwhelming, and but yeah, there's something about watching matches from this period where the crowd are so into everything that's happening all the time. And a lot of the time, most of what these guys are doing in there is just punching each other back and forth. And the crowd eat it up. So there's something to be enjoyed about that. I don't think I know this to be true that a lot of people like Val Venis quite a lot. I don't.
No, he does. I mean, especially not now. Now he's insane. Now he owns like a weed shop in California and is like a full-on conspiracy nut, and like he's crazy now. He's
They do say marijuana makes you
He's a
paranoid.
very paranoid man.
Um,
But I didn't get Val
but
Venus. Um,
there wasn't a great dynamic in this match for me. Like I didn't feel it in the way I did the later matches that
mm,
we'll talk about. Um, but it was fun enough. It didn't outstay its welcome. There's obviously the spot where Rikishi
yes.
jumps off the cage, and he is such a big man to be jumping off a steel cage. So that is exciting to watch, and it's a great moment. And when he's doing that, he really owns the crowd. He takes the time, he breathes, he lets the camera sit on him. You can see the contemplation, you can see all the gears working. It reminds me of something Randy Orton said when he did the Stone Cold podcast, and he's talking about how those moments where that the camera is only on
Mm,
you, they're the moments that you savor and you take your time because that is your time to do
yeah.
whatever you want and to let the crowd sort of buy into that. And it reminded me of that, and it sort of shows what a pro he is. And then we have like a shenanigans and
Shenanigans.
craziness with getting hit with the camera by
Taz.
I forget who that was now.
Yeah.
Taz comes out and hits him with the camera. Trish is involved in part of it, so there's all
Lita
that
gets
craziness at the
involved.
end, and yeah, Lita gets involved. So there's that classic sort of finish, but I'd say this is a fairly tame match. But so many matches that where there aren't much going on in this time in WWE are still very enjoyable because of how
Mm.
over everyone is and how into it the
Yeah,
crowd
I
are.
mean, I completely agree. There are a couple of good moments in the match. I think Rikishi just hoofing um, Val Venus into the cage, like really just throwing him into it, was quite something. And Trish managing to smash the door on Rikishi's head, which again looked not the most brutal thing we're going to talk about in these matches, but it was up there. Um, and then the weird belt whipping bit with Lita and Trish that I was like, okay, this is hit. But again, the crowd's so into it, they're loving that, and they're like, oh, that's happening. And then they turn around, and Rikishi's on top of the cage, and they're like, oh, this is happening. Like it really did. It this match to me is because I didn't grow up with this. I hopped in after all of it. But this match, I
Yeah.
started watching when Technical Excellence was the main event. It was Kurt Angle and Eddie Guerrero and, all of those guys, Brock Lesnar, like showing that, like, we can do the wrestling. Whereas this isn't that. This is just like get the story told and then do just keep the crowd into it to hit the big moments, like, and just keep the crowd
Yeah.
going insane constantly. And I think they do a good job at that. As you said, kind of an underwhelming match. Like it is middle of the show. It's just this isn't a blood feud or anything. This is just a match. But I wanted to
Yeah.
kind of pick one that was, I think the other two matches we're going to talk about are so storyline driven that I just wanted to kind of get an
Yeah.
idea of Rikishi, especially when he hits that big old splash, which is very impressive for a man of his size. Like he's 400 pounds at this point. That is an insane thing
Yeah.
to do. And also that moment where he's in the corner holding the cable that keeps the cage up and then lets it go and just slowly starts shimmying. Like,
It
I
builds
had my
tension
hands
really
sweaty.
well.
It was a lot. So that's the first match. The next match we're going to talk about now Austin knows that Rikishi's the one that's run him over. Rikishi's now a heel. He's coming
Yeah.
out to his banger of a song, Bad Man. I watched a few promos with Rikishi in this mode. He cuts one just before this match starts against Austin. It's a no-hold-barred match. The story going into it is Rikishi saying, Austin ain't coming. He's not going to be here. I'm the winner. Announce me as the winner. Commissioner Mick Foley. He gets, at the start of the match, he gets Foley to come out, lambasts him for thinking that Austin was going to show up. head of the table Roman Reigns. This is not. He doesn't have that menacingness really. But he's giving it his all. And then the glass smashes. The crowd goes insane. Austin rolls up. What I love is his music starts, and then he drives into the arena. And I'm like, in kayfabe, who set that up? Who like, do they have someone like a fire tower watch? Just like, he's coming, ring the siren. Glass shatters, Austin arrives.
Yeah, the entrance music is one of the many things that does not make sense in wrestling. It just plays.
It happen
the
once.
Wrestling gods of the universe.
Yeah.
You know, the wrestling gods just sense when your presence is
when they
near.
did the brand split in 2016 and they had Daniel Bryan and Foley as the managers. There was one moment where Seth Rollins said something to Mick Foley like, "I'm gonna go kick his ass." And he starts walking, and Mick Foley pulls out a walkie-talkie and goes, guys, Seth's coming in the ring. Could you play his entrance music? Thanks. And I was like, oh, okay. Is that the manager's job? Is that the GM's job? It's just to line up music. It's to warn the production crew.
That's great.
But yeah, so Austin comes driving in a car that already has the front of it smashed in. He gets out. We immediately start brawling. Very quick start to the match. How did you find it from there?
Oh, I mean, it's you know, we talked about WrestleMania recently.
We did.
And one of my constant complaints about a lot of the WrestleMania stuff is that there's no story, and that isn't just a complaint from that isn't just a complaint of the product, but it's also, I feel like it's a fundamental part of wrestling because it gives the performers something to latch onto. You know, like in a real fight, it often that is present as well. You know, Stone Cold said not too long back that like UFC do what WWE do better than WWE do it, right? But it's not actually as necessary because in the UFC, you're really fighting and you're really scared for your own safety, partly, but also you just really like need to sort of like beat this guy up so you don't get hurt. But in wrestling, as in like acting or anything like that, you really need, or it really, really helps the situation to have motivation, to know why you're coming out to beat this guy up. And so, because this match has that, I think, and because Stone Cold is involved, it is so much more intense and frantic right off the bat than anything that you saw at WrestleMania, and really anything that you see in most of wrestling these days. Like, when this match starts, it's so fast, and you get the sense that Stone Cold is so furious. He's like this kind of furious whirlwind, and Rikishi wasn't really expecting it, and he doesn't quite know what to do, and it doesn't slow down from like start to finish. It just doesn't slow down. It escalates and escalates and escalates, and then the point
let's
where
talk
like
about the finish.
And then it escalates to the point of just absolute ridiculousness and chaos. I don't know if you want to take it over and sort of explain what the finish
I'll
of
go
this
into the
match
finish.
is.
I mean, it is this isn't, to call it a match is kind. Like, this is a brawl.
Yeah.
It's just a straight up fight. They go into the crowd,
It's
they
a
fight
brawl,
around ringside. Austin murders him with some chair shots. Murders him with the car door, and the trunk of the car, the boot, before throwing Rikishi into the back of his pickup, driving it out into the parking lot. He then proceeds to take Rikishi out. Intention of driving said truck into Rikishi's face. He's a bloody mess at this moment. He ain't going nowhere.
It's to murder, kill him. Basically.
He's gonna murder him. He's against a stone wall. Like, not only is he gonna murder him, but and just before this, just before they've come out, as Austin's gotten in the car, he's broken up a bit. He's done his thing in the car and then driven, which is, comes up very in just a moment. He pulls back. He's ready to go at Rikishi. As he goes forward, cop car comes in the way, smashes into it. Then all the police show up, open the door to arrest him. And as they open the door, I see Austin going, shit. Like, with the beer. Be like, well, technically, yeah, you're going to get done not only for attempted murder, not only for damaging a police officer's car, but also you were drink driving at this point. So you are going to jail, if not prison for a while at this point. This is all story and it's fantastic. I really enjoyed it. It's stupid. It's really stupid. And then immediately after that, we have to cut to like the Dudley boys preparing to take on Edge and Christian, who are dressed up as the Los Conquistadors.
But it's also so over the top and so involved and I assume quite expensive. I mean,
there were like 20 cop cars.
Yeah, there was so many. It wasn't just like one guy comes and arrests them. It's like, I mean, they must have had so much money at that time that they were like, yeah, let's just throw like fucking 15 police cars at it. Yeah, like, I mean, maybe they weren't real police cars. I don't know, but
it doesn't matter. It's still expensive.
It doesn't matter. It's still it's a lot to do and get involved with. I will say that element of attempted murder has always taken me out of wrestling a little bit, and it happens earlier in this match as well, where he tries to hit him with the sledgehammer. No, sledgehammer.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm gonna swing the sledgehammer as hard as I can at your head. And I've seen that spot a few times, and what happens is they move and then they smack whatever.
Which is good, because I wouldn't enjoy watching it if they hit it.
Well, that'd be like it'd be murder. Then it'd be murder, and I just think that I just don't buy, as angry as I'm sure Steve Austin is. I don't buy that he's like, no, I'm gonna murder this guy in front of an arena of people.
See, normally I would agree, but Rikishi has run him over. At this point.
He's running well.
Like, he ran him over with a car. If someone runs me over with a car, I'm like, and I had the opportunity to cave their head in with a sledgehammer, at that point, I'm like,
I think so.
The thought's definitely going to cross my mind.
My anger runs that far, but yeah. Well, anyway, but it's crazy, yeah, and it's madness, and I was laughing at the end, and the thing is about it is it's just so entertaining.
Yeah.
As silly as it is, and again, like, they're just not, in terms of like pure wrestling. Again, they're not doing anything. They're punching each other. Some crazy chair shots. They're selling like crazy.
Actually thrown was a super kick from Rikishi, and it almost felt out of place in this match. I was like, no, that's interesting.
Yeah. But it's just so bloody entertaining. Like, it's just great stuff, really, and I think that's what wrestling was. I really think that was just the heyday of wrestling, because everything was just so much fun all of the time, and it was because it was so over the top and ridiculous. So
and it's funny because I don't know if it makes for the best like go back and watch viewing, because of how insane it all is. But for like, if this was back in the day, and that's my like weekly watch along. And the other thing is, you don't have, you don't have the ability to rewatch it at any point back then. Like, you had to tune in on Monday. You had to tune in the pay-per-view to see what insanity was going to happen. And if I'd just seen that and I'd saw, an attempted murder and Austin's being arrested, I'm going to tune in on Monday, because I'm like, where's this going? And where is it going? I'll tell you where it's going. It's going to Armageddon 2000, capping the year off with... Now, I've seen probably almost every Hell in a Cell match. I've never seen this one.
Tell me.
This is the 6-man Hell in a Cell featuring Rikishi, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Kurt Angle, Triple H, and The Undertaker. Nailed it. one of those names clearly sticks out as I don't know if you should be in this match, and it's who we're talking about today. To the point where I think JR says on commentary, he's the only man in this match who's never tasted the WWF title in his career, and that would still be the case after this match. It's like, I look at that lineup and I'm like, did Kane really need to wrestle Chris Jericho, or could he have maybe been the sixth man in this match? I don't know.
I mean, with those 5, Kane would have still stuck out.
He would have, but in a kind of like, you almost get it. If Kane's in there, you're like, I get it. Like in hindsight, you're like, yeah, he would have been the sixth guy. Like, they're basically saying that Rikishi is the sixth top guy at this point, and they've got at this point they have Benoit and Jericho and Kane and Guerrero, and like, they have these guys, but they're like, no, Rikishi, he's our number
also
6.
Rikishi is heavily involved in the plot as well, isn't he?
That as well. So before this match even starts, this is fascinating. So Triple H comes out, not to Motorhead, but to his My Time music. I prefer Motorhead. What about yourself?
Definitely, I didn't recognize this music.
Oh wow, you heard it and you're like, what's happening?
Yeah.
Then Rikishi comes out, and then Kurt Angle comes out. Then they bring out the WWF Champion, because what they're trying to say here is, hey, let's be honest with ourselves. The next 3 coming out are the actual stars. And whilst part of me is like, this is disrespectful, the other part of me was like, this is very accurate as well. Because then we get The Undertaker coming out. He's rolling. He's got Limp Bizkit on his side. Prime Undertaker. And then The Rock, and then Stone Cold. And the reaction that these men get when they come out is insane. Like, it is... You think they would have been out of action for the last, 6 months. The noise the fans make as they make their way to the ring.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really liked about the way this match started is you've got Triple H and Rikishi already in the ring, because they're buds. Kurt Angle refusing to get in the ring because he's like, no, you're not jumping me. And then what I loved, as The Undertaker gets in the ring, you have, just a million referees in there stopping everyone from going at each other, and I love that visual. It really started to build up the chaos, and you really got this sense as people were walking to the ring, everything that you needed to know about them. So Kurt Angle, he's looking at the Hell in a Cell in just fear. The Undertaker, he's angry, but he's ready to go. He just wants to start fighting. My favorite walkout by far is The Rock's. Because The Rock just walks out into the ring like, I don't give a fuck what type of match we're having. I'm The Rock. I'm winning this. And it's such this walk of purpose. Gets in the ring, hits his pose on the top rope and just stares at them all. Like, let's go. Let's go. Loads of intensity. And then, of course, the glass shatters. Austin comes walking out and immediately just grabs Angle, and we are away. I had no idea how they were going to keep up with everything that happened in this match. I'm going to guess that they didn't do... You think they didn't do it very successfully, keeping up with all this action?
No, I thought it was fucking amazing.
Oh.
I thought this is just pure, unfiltered, attitude era chaos.
Yes.
And I loved it. And I was so surprised. Not only had I never seen this match before, I'd never heard of it. And I feel like this...
Really?
I mean, it probably... Yeah, I mean, I'm sure this is a classic and that everyone cites. But, wrestling from that time for me was... I was such a young child, I was such a young child at that time. And as I say, I watched this sporadically, and I never really... Occasionally, I've gone back and watch your big WrestleMania matches and watch the odd episode of Raw and things like that.
Yeah, of course.
But not really. And so, watching this, I was like, wow, these are just I mean, It's weird as well because I almost feel this is a very controversial thing to say, but I almost feel like the uh the Undertaker is a bit of an odd one out in this match as well because if you look at Stone Cold, Triple H, Kurt Angle, and The Rock, I mean they are maybe like the four or it's like you could make a solid argument for those guys being like the four best in-ring performers of all time. You could make a solid argument
Yeah.
for that. And especially at that time, I actually think The Undertaker isn't involved in that conversation until like
Yeah, this isn't
years
his
later.
best time. Like even he's only been the American Badass at this point for like a year, and
Yeah.
I think I could be wrong, but I feel like this is the time in his life where he's going through a lot of personal stuff. Like I think he's getting a divorce.
Yeah.
Things ain't going great, and
It's
you
very
see it in him. Like he's not in
Yeah, it's
very
very
good
simple
shape.
stuff. It's very
It's
simple stuff
yeah.
from him, but those four guys are like,
Oh,
oh
they're
God,
yeah.
everything they do is crazy. And Rikishi keeps up. I know like we're talking about Rikishi here, but like Rikishi keeps up. Like he's very much a part of the match, and the match itself is insanity. But it's great insanity. Every time you flick to something else is going on, and yeah, we don't keep up with all of the action, but I enjoy that. I was like, there's so much that every time we flick to something, it's like, holy shit, what's
What's
going on
happening
over here?
now? Yeah,
What's going on over here? Someone's head's just gone through a car window.
there's a
Someone else is just being like,
it's crazy. There's
yeah,
a moment in this match where kind of everyone has a go in the ring. Like it's a one-on-one in the ring each time, and everyone else is brawling outside. And
yeah,
quite close to the start, we get The Rock and Rikishi, and Rikishi's just
yeah,
bumping for The Rock, like he's just hitting all the big
yeah,
moves. And then everyone else has a go, and then we get this storyline bit, and this is part of the reason why I always wanted to watch this match. This is one of those moments that's always on like the Undertaker and Rikishi's show reels. Towards the end of the match, Undertaker chokeslams Rikishi off the cell, and he lands
oh,
on this truck full of like sawdust and hay. And I always saw that clip, and I'm like, what's the story? How does that get there? And it doesn't seem weird. That like, what's the setup for that? And the setup for it is what felt like the big build-up going into this match is that Vince McMahon doesn't want the match to happen because these are his best guys, and he doesn't want them all getting injured in one match. Each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I kind of like. It's a different premise, but I kind of like it. He brings the truck out with a construction crew to tear down the cell mid-match because he's like, we need to get rid of this to stop the match. Yeah. Never mind the fact that's more dangerous to just start tearing it down while they're all inside it. But he's insane, so that's kind of fun and works. I then buy the fact there's all this sawdust in the back of the pickup because it almost feels like these were just some construction workers on a job, and this insane billionaire's just run up to them and been like, "I need you,
lads.
Come with me with your truck. Ask no questions. Here's money." And they're just like, "Okay." So I buy it. I'm like, okay, that's fine. But the whole setup of getting the truck in and like scaring off Vince and all of that, I'm 90% sure that's when Rikishi had his moment in the ring because we see none of it. Absolutely nothing. I think I maybe see him hit a clothesline on someone in the distance, and I'm like, it's happening. It's happening, and we actually aren't watching any of it. We need a split screen or something.
And I talk about how great all of those four guys are, and they are, some of the best of all time, no doubt. And I think most people would agree with that. But Rikishi, he doesn't look out of place for a second. I mean, we talk about this all the time for big guys, but man, Rikishi is so athletic for a big guy. I mean, he can do the inside out bump like anyone.
Oh, he's maybe
and he
the
does
best
it in one of these matches.
Yeah, this one I think he does it for The Rock.
It's this one.
Yeah,
madness.
Yeah,
madness. And it's interesting because the Yokozuna thing, like, he was never as fat as Yokozuna.
No.
Yokozuna was like one of those people you see on those like
He was
shitty American.
£600 when he died.
Oh God, yeah. You know, like My Best Big Fat Friend or something like one
Yeah.
of those like
My
documentaries or something you see on
£1,000
like
life. All that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, something like that. But Rikishi was, I mean, is even at this point where he's obviously a very big, heavy
Mm.
dude, and overweight, no doubt, but like his athleticism is unreal,
Mm.
and the way he does all of the basics is you know is top. The way he punches, the way he sells, the way he commands the sort of stage and all of that. So he is absolutely by no means out of his depth
Yeah.
here. Like he is one of the dudes, and the bump that he takes is horrendous. Let me ask you this: crash mat beneath the
Absolutely.
wood chippings?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
But it's still a scary drop. And I think I've seen Rikishi talk about this. And it's the thing that always goes through my head is, for me, the fear isn't the falling backwards. It's the
yeah,
falling backwards accurately. Because when you're falling from that height, the width of that bed isn't very large. And all it takes is a bit too far either side and you hit the edge of it. And that's when
uh,
you then no longer are with us. So
yeah.
it's a scary bump to take. And it looks terrifying.
And it goes to show how like they are stuntmen. Like that's what
Mm,
stuntmen do. Except stuntmen probably have like a lot more training in that specific thing because like fucking 360 days of the year as a professional wrestler, you aren't doing that.
mm.
You know what I mean? Like stuntmen are doing that like every day on every movie set, but like you're a pro wrestler and you're doing your pro wrestling shit, but then all of a sudden one day they're like, "Oh no, we want you to fall backwards
Off a,
onto a
yeah.
fucking truck."
And you're like,
It's
I guess
madness.
I've got the still image of it up now as we're speaking, him falling
Yeah.
backwards. And one thing I really appreciated in the presentation of it is the whole moment plays out on a wide. Like, and when I say wide, I mean
Yeah, yeah,
we
yeah,
are
yeah,
miles away because we
yeah,
have to
yeah,
see what's going
yeah,
on in the ring at the same time
yeah,
as
yeah,
what's
yeah.
going on above it,
It's a
which
great
is
shot. Yeah.
yeah, it's really cool. Yeah,
No, but the
this
match, the match is
it's
chaos
chaos in the
and
best
it's
way.
brutal, and I love it. I loved it, and I recommend anyone if you just want an hour of, and it's long, but if you just want like a 45 minutes to an hour of just pure old school attitude era entertainment, you really can't do much better than that match.
Yeah, no, this is of the matches that we've spoken about. This is the one I would recommend. Um,
Yeah.
it's fantastic. Um, yeah, so I mean, let's wrap it up here with our boy Rikishi. This is kind of the best year of his career, and this is the best it would get. Never quite
Yeah.
got never quite got the WWF title. Even though, as
Yeah.
we watched, he did compete for it. For me, it's a case of his previous booking. Like he was a very fun loving guy and all of this, and it's a bit silly as well. He does things like the stink face, which is not this like terrifying move. So I think there's an element of that, a bit too much comedy, and then just wrong place, wrong time. I think when you
Yeah.
have
I mean,
all those other guys in
yeah.
at the time, like you're not getting above Austin the Rock. I mean, Austin the Rock alone, you're not getting
Any
above
of those
them. But then
guys.
you also have
Yeah.
to compete with Angle, with Triple H, with Chris Jericho, with The Undertaker,
Yeah.
with Kane. It was just
100%.
never.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately. I'm very surprised he didn't have better success on the Indies when he got out there. But then part of me also thinks that by the time he'd left WWE, like he'd been there since '92, he left in
The weight
2004.
and the age.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think he was wrapping it up. He was wrapping it up, and also he'd left
Yeah.
because he wasn't in the best of health. He was very overweight, and I don't think other companies really saw him as the top star. It's why he ended up leaving TNA. He was only there for I believe like 7 weeks. He asked for more money, and they said absolutely not. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
I understand why he wasn't a world champion. I don't think that would have changed. Like if he was wrestling today, I don't think he would be a world champion. Um,
Well, I think there was maybe you see the problem is every wrestler sort of gets into a place where well not everyone but some of them have a few different times but Rikishi this seems to be the year 2000 was his prime
Mm,
and it was his time and like this is his moment where he's in the best stories he's having his best matches
yeah,
but the thing is it just so happened that during that time he was competing against all those
yeah.
people we mentioned Rock, Austin, Taker, Angle, Triple H, Jericho, Kane. I mean, how do you
There's
don't
just no
compete with
way.
that?
Yeah.
I think maybe if he was in his prime and this had happened to him maybe in 95 or
Yeah,
96 or
when it's
maybe
like
like
Diesel
2004.
is the best you've
Yeah,
got.
or
Yeah.
maybe like 2004, where we sort of lose like Rock and Austin. Like
Maybe. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
maybe either side of that it could have happened. But if you're going to be on your prime in 2000 and your name isn't Stone Cold or The Rock, you're going to have a hard time.
And one thing I will say is, you speak to a non-wrestling fan and they find out you like wrestling, um, that are around our age that watched wrestling at this time.
Everyone
They'll
knew
always say
Rikishi.
Rikishi. They'll always
Yeah,
say Rikishi
yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
he really appealed
No, he was a
to
star. Yeah,
a generation. He was fun. He was happy. It was, we're a
yeah.
bit younger back then, and that stuff appeals to us. So I
Was he?
go on.
Was he the first? Was he the first big guy that could move like that?
Um,
Because he's a different breed to Yokozuna or Andre the Giant.
yeah, I mean, definitely faster than Andre, but at the time, you've also got kind of Big Show moving like that in WCW. Like, obviously, the second he
Oh,
gets to
get out of it.
WWE,
Big
he
Show's not
is much
moving like
slower.
Rikishi.
He's much slower when
Big
he
Show's
gets
not
there.
taking an inside out bump.
No, that's true. That's true. No, no one of that like weight class is doing that at this time. Like now, we see it quite a lot. We see big guys that are much more athletic. Kevin Owens, Keith Lee, hitting bloody shooting star presses and whatnot. But like those guys are also not the size Rikishi is at this point, and it's incredibly impressive. Yeah, I think Rikishi's got his place. I don't think the world title was unfortunately ever in his grasp, unless, as you said, he'd kind of been either side of the years he was there. But hey ho, that is Rikishi. So we're going to wrap it up here. Dan, next week is our last episode in this season that no one's watching. But one day historians will go back to and be like, man, you should check out the lost first season of Brass Ringers. So who are we taking it out with? Who's finishing us off for the season?
Well, I didn't really know until about an hour ago, and then I guess 2 hours ago, and I had this idea, and I was like, oh, it's so perfect. It's so perfect because a lot of people tune into the show. Well, they don't, but but if they did,
But if they did, this is what they'd tune in for.
I'd imagine that they would be of the American persuasion, and they would be like, "Who are these two guys talking about American pro wrestling all the time?" And a lot of the guys we've spoken about, if not American, are certainly not British. So how could we end it with anyone other than the legend that is Mr. William Regal?
Oh, yes, sir. Speaking of TikTok, TikTok somehow knows I like wrestling. And there was this video with this person saying, what's that one celebrity crush you have that people would be surprised to hear would get it? And it's this like young 20-something Asian American girl who's just like, you know what? William Regal, he'd get it. He'd absolutely get it. Man's a snack. And I was like, he is a human that's aged like fine wine.
He's aged like fine wine. Such a beautiful mane of silver hair that he's got.
I'm jealous.
Like,
can't wait. Yes, love Regal. Yeah, cool. So that's what we're doing next week. Do you know what the matches are yet, or?
I do not. But if you follow us on Twitter, although we didn't do this last week, but I promise I will this week. If you follow us on
Twitter. Are we a water filtration system now?
Which is at Brass Ringers. I promise you, I will post the 3 matches that we're talking about, so you can watch it along with us when the time comes.
Excellent. William Regal's coming next week. That will be the last episode of the season. We'll be taking a week off after it, and then we'll come back with something else. I don't know what, though. Thank you for watching in the future, because none of you are watching right now. Thank you for watching the highlights of this over on our highlights channel, Brass Ring Highlights. We're working on that,
which will be in the description.
Yeah,
at some point we're working on it. It's all a work in progress. Much like life, it's a work in progress, and yeah, keep working. We'll see you next week.